I immediately dropped my camera. I had a friend like, why did he drop his camera? And then I immediately just ran downstairs, staged out for a second, and just pitted for the first minute and a half, obviously. Ran back upstairs. So
and then like started taking photos almost immediately.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in. This is the Scoped Exposure podcast. I'm super, super stoked to be sitting down with Gabe, the Pigeon. How are you, bud?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. Can you just give the folks at home just a little intro about who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it for?
I'm a touring photographer out of California. About 50 miles outside of Los Angeles, if that puts you in any perspective. I've been touring with bands full-time for about 2 years now. Did my first tour in spring 2016. Yeah.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Becerra.
Becerra?
So I get a lot of Becerra. Becerra is the right way, so simpler terms. Becerra. Put it together, Becerra.
Nice. Cool. So, Gabe Becerra, wanted to get a little bit of an idea around all of our guests on how they actually got into hardcore, because I always find it interesting on the different ways that whether it's through metalcore or punk or listen to some weird mix compilation. So, give me your, what was the breakdown that changed your life, or how did you get into this realm of music?
My dad grew up listening to a lot of Metallica, obviously, and Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, etc. Growing up, that was kind of the music that was always around me, so I've always been into heavy music. My uncle on my mom's side was always into more thrash, of Slayer, Exodus, etc. So I've always had, like, the bridge for that, but when it came down to it, like, with hardcore, it started with Terror, best band in the world.
Mm-hmm. Did you see them live because they're from LA as well?
No, so I have a close family friend who's practically family. I was probably 11 or 12. They came to my house and stayed there for about a week wearing a Terror shirt. Didn't know what that was, and it's kind of how it started, but I didn't actually hear Terror until probably a few months after that. I don't know if I was watching Headbangers Ball or something on MTV, but I remember seeing Terror on there. I don't even remember. I just know that the name stuck to me, and I'd always see Terror on flyers in California playing with Stick to Your Guns or any of those Orange County based bands or California bands in general. But for sure, the album that put me deep into hardcore for sure was Keepers of the Faith.
Cool.
So.
Yeah, and that's super interesting just as far as like the timeline and how things have changed just in music in general with the internet and, just marketing to people differently. You don't get as many, you see certain names or posters or things like that. So that's interesting how that name just stuck with you until it like brought you in. Have you done photos on a tour with Terror before?
No, not working for them, but they did 2 shows on Life and Death in 2017. That was actually my first full-time tour. Twitch and Tongues was awesome enough to take me out, give me a shot at working with them, and Terror got to play the Gilman show, which is amazing. I believe that was actually my first time at Gilman, and sold-out crowd. No Warning was on that, and
cool.
They played the LA show as well, and that's it. That's the only time I've actually had Terror on a tour that I was on. So
right, cool. So I did a little bit of a deep dive on your Facebook, and something that I noticed is that even going 10 years back, it always seems like you had a camera in your hands, whether you were in high school or there was very old pictures of you with a Nikon camera. Mm-hmm. So how did you get into photography initially?
When I was 10 is when I started skateboarding. I've always been into obviously just visual aspects, so just cameras in general. Something about it intrigued me. I didn't pick up my first personal camera, so I didn't get a DSLR camera until I was on my 17th birthday. So it was my senior year. It was the first time I got a DSLR camera, Nikon 3100. It's what I started with. I had that for about 4 years. But my junior year in high school, I took a video production class. My awesome teacher, who's basically the one who taught me just about everything I know today, was very hands-on with just any type of information I asked. So I'd say since 2011, I've been taking pictures with DSLR cameras, working with all that stuff.
Cool. And what was your first show that you ever brought your camera to and started trying that out?
I don't believe I snuck it in. I think I just had it on my shoulder. But truth be told, my first show I ever photographed was Owl City, outside
Really?
of Staples Center. It was like a Christmas charity type thing. Bring a toy, donate it. Goes to the youth who doesn't have too much as we do. I wasn't in no photo pit, but I was up front. I have a guilty pleasure for Owl City. So I was up front.
I don't believe in guilty pleasures. I think it's like you just like what you like.
Yeah,
No shame.
I definitely have a soft side with music. So, but yeah, so I was probably like front of the row at that event, and I just took pictures, and it came out great. Adam eventually, singer of Owl City, eventually saw them. I think like a year and a half later, and But my first like hardcore show that I photographed, I want to say it was Nitty Gritty Fest in 2012, or I believe it was 2012. Rotting Out played, Counterparts played, Betrayal played. Yeah, it's just a bunch of California bands. Unfortunately, Sound and Fury had got canceled that year, so Nitty Gritty Fest was the next thing that came about for that.
Yeah. And walk me through like what your experience was on that first show, because now like you've definitely made a name for yourself as far as like on tours or going for certain fests, so it's almost a no-brainer if there's like any rules or regulations around photography at shows where it's like, oh well, if Gabe's taking photos, like I'm sure we can either make an exception or whatever. So when you were just starting out, were a lot of people like, who is this guy, like you don't have the credentials, or what was your experience?
Well, there's no issues with the Owl City show because I was kind of buried in the crowd, so no one was really paying attention. When I photographed Rotting Out, there was a lot of people on stage. No one hassled me or anything, but I couldn't really tell you when every aspect of like photography came, like where people were like, oh, I know who this kid is, or I never really had too much of an issue. Thank God, California is really lenient with photographers and stuff, which is awesome. Bands work well with them being on stage and stuff, so there's never really been too much of a hassle with that, which obviously I'm beyond grateful for, because if it wasn't for bands like Alpha and Omega who gave me like any type of compliment, so Luis was the first person to ever like shout out some photos of mine, and that kind of started there, so I never really had too much.
That's where it kind of started.
Yeah.
That's cool. As far as like a technical, like, because I'm sure a couple of people who are listening or watching are photographers or videographers and want to, learn some of the tips and things that you do. How has your photo setup evolved over the years, and what are you currently using?
Recently, the only thing that I've added to my shooting gear is a fisheye, 10 millimeter fisheye. Other than that, the only thing I use is 2470 2.8, 35 1.4 Sigma lens. Other than that, it's kind of always been the same. I haven't had too much gear changes in a minute, but for the past 3 years, it's been like those same things. And a 70 200 millimeter Tamron 2.8 telephoto. Mm-hmm. Those 4 lenses is basically all I ever use. I haven't used anything in like 4 years.
Right.
So.
Oh, okay.
So.
And you would only use something like the 70 to 200 in certain situations. I think I saw some Sound and Fury photos from last year where you were a little bit like more
Right.
up in the
Yeah.
crowd.
Yeah. So
Or-
unfortunately, the state was kind of overwhelmed. I don't think just because of who I am or anyone for that matter should have rights to be on a stage.
For sure, absolutely.
So I took it upon myself to just let other people have some room on the stage for a second or so. So I stood up top on the balcony and right next to I believe it was a soundboard up there, whatever it was. So I hung out there, have my 7200. I actually normally I would have my flashes set up on triggers, but it worked well enough so I could just keep my flash on my shoe adapter. So I just hung up there, came out well, but I've used my 7200 at This Is Hardcore once. That worked out well. I actually use it often on tours just because I do definitely hate having a lot of the same pictures after a while.
For sure.
And so it's fun to just try something different, especially since I'm more used to like punk DIY venue type things, garages, etc. It was kind of awesome to like, oh, I'm top of a balcony, stage is 200 feet away. Let's see what type of pictures I could take with this zoom lens from here, or even from the crowd, like the aspect changes for everything. So it's awesome.
Sure. I think that's something that I would love to touch on is, you know, you were mentioning how California is like very lenient with the photographers and those kind of things, while either some scenes don't have photographers to, you know, document their scene or things like that, or, you know, there might be some, but, you know, either venues or promoters have certain, I guess, ideas or ways they want to do things. I know there's a lot of really good photographers and even videographers that come out of California. So every stage is going to have a rough amount of space for, you know, maybe a photographer here, maybe a video person here, maybe two photographers. So especially for California, that it's almost like a double-edged sword in a way, where
Right.
it's like I want to get good photos of this band, but like you said, you also want to give other people a chance
Yeah.
to do that. So how do you kind of like balance that when certain shows or festivals come up?
It's difficult. Sometimes I definitely do get caught up in the moment. So, but if I got space to spare, I definitely wouldn't ever mind. Like, even if you're a new person or you're someone who's been doing it your entire life, it doesn't really matter. Like, you can share the space. I don't need 5 feet to myself. Like, I can even just hide behind a amp. You know, it doesn't really matter. I've shot in the stage, off stage, in the crowd before at hardcore shows, and like, it's never too big of an issue. Just obviously just watch out for your gear and like, do obviously keep in mind. But if someone was to hit you or your gear, don't take that to heart.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's not intentional. They get caught up in the moment too. So you're
Right.
definitely putting yourself in harm's way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I do hog the stage sometimes. I can't deny that.
Well, like we just shot. This is day 2 of the Wild Rose 2019 Fest, and we were shooting it, both of us, yesterday.
Right.
Me doing video and you doing photos, and yeah, I could clearly see not you hogging it necessarily, but you finding space where there is. And I'm sure there's like, you know, maybe an AV person was like, I like the less people on stage is better.
Oh.
But like, you know, I was seeing you, like Sunny was on the other side and you were like crawling up. You were going down for some stuff. I even remember at like DBK, it was like a, you know, a very small stage for some of those things. Yeah, I think it boils down to being respectful and
Yeah.
and knowing that, you know, me panning my camera and maybe getting in the way of one of your photos isn't intentional. It's just like we're all
Yeah, it's all in the moment for sure.
Yeah.
I've only ever had one incident where someone's actually gotten on my nerves with it. But I mean, hey, we're all caught up in the moment, and when it comes down to it, you're not working for these bands half the time, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So you are taking their stage. It's given to them, but yeah, I definitely try to find where I can stand, so I'm for sure not in the way. if the stage is overwhelmed with family and guests, that's priority. Definitely like for any photographer, like you see family and friends on there, definitely try not to stand in the way. I hate being in the way. That's the one thing on my mind all the time. Even if I'm working, if I'm getting paid to work for the band, if I feel like I'm in the way of anything, that's in my mind the whole time. It's just sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, and yeah, hopping down off stage or whatever, standing behind a drum set or behind a guitar rig or whatever, just make your shots. Just try to do what you can do. I know for sure it's frustrating, especially when you're out of your comfort zone because you might be used to the same thing all the time. But yeah, obviously just try to like respect the space of not just photographers around you, but the bands too. You
Or
can,
just even the people who are just
yeah,
there to see
even
the
the people
bands.
who are watching, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, like I said, those things aren't things that aren't ever on my mind. If I'm taking a step somewhere that might be too close, and I know it's always too close sometimes, I'll make sure I'm not stepping on any cables, make sure there's no pedal boards next to me, and if there are, I'm trying to keep my feet the furthest as I can from them.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I've only unplugged once. It was for a band I was on tour with, so it wasn't the worst thing. But comes down to it. That's the one thing you're not supposed to do,
Right.
especially being a photographer for any type of
Yeah.
genre of music.
Yeah.
So
So, talk to me a little bit about just your kind of career now. Touring with multiple bands on a pretty, I would say, full-time basis. I've seen a lot of different ones, either LA or elsewhere. You just did a run with Knock Loose, actually, all through the States. I know Twitching Tongues brings you out a lot. So talk to me about just the way that you're actually to make your lifestyle like feasible to do that, but also some of the business end of those kind of things. We don't have to get into numbers necessarily, but
touring, the aspect of touring, whether you're in a band, whether you're a merch person, any type of job on tour, it's draining in every way possible, mentally, physical, lack of sleep here and there. It's a hard lifestyle to adjust to, for sure. Right now, I am beyond exhausted. But
thanks for doing the podcast.
oh yeah, thanks for having me again. But I love doing what I do. It's awesome. Every band that I've worked for has been completely grateful of me just being there as an asset photographer, whatever it is. Knocked, the opportunity to tour at Knocked was super last minute. Beyond happy that they were willing to give a chance to me about it. Twitching Tongues was the first like bigger name band, and that opened a lot of doors for me for sure. Within a couple days, I was already offered a Tongues support tour with Hatebreed, and that was one of the craziest things I got to see. But as far as making it happen, making touring and having a personal life feasible, kind of just make some compromises. It's the hardest thing. Like I said, you're definitely giving up a lot of personal time with friends, family. Right now, I'm missing my dogs and my cats. Right now, it's crazy. I haven't typically I miss them all the time, but right now and for some reason, any tour I'm on, I always see a cat or a dog. For some reason, this Knock Loose tour, I saw maybe 4 dogs and 1 cat, and I didn't even get to pet the cat. So
it's like your way of connecting with them.
Yeah,
through them
it's
almost.
just any little piece of home, and it's cool. Typically, any tour I do, we never have a California show, and if we do, it's at the end or the beginning. So it's very rare to have a home show, but it's awesome because every time there's a home show, all the friends are out there. I never go home when I'm at a hometown show or anything, just because if I go home, I'm not going to want to leave just because
Right.
immediately so having a little piece of home, try to make it happen wherever you can. So even I could be in the middle of Texas or wherever, any little thing can just remind me of home, and that's kind of those are the kind of things you just gotta like live with, just knowing that you're, me being me. I've been touring 90% of my time for sure. I'm probably home at the most 6 weeks at a time, and I haven't been home for more than 5 weeks since like last May.
Wow.
So
May of 2018.
18.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously just take as much time as you can. You definitely appreciate things along the way, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think like touring is like this big, like, pot of gold, end of the rainbow kind of thing. Like lots of people just like dream about it, whether like even if they've never played in a band, like, oh, I would love to go on tour. And sometimes when I think there was like a meme going around right now where it's like, oh, like you go on tour, you must see all these amazing places, and it's like highways,
Yeah.
gas station
travel shops,
bathrooms.
McDonald's. Yeah. I personally feel, especially nowadays, it's super awesome that bands who, it's a little controversial topic, but I think it's awesome that bands who still aren't really making a lot of money are willing to take out photographers and pay them what they can. I know it's one of those things that photographers are very strict on nowadays, that people deserve to get what they deserve to be paid, and
Sure.
I back that 100%, but certain things aren't always in reach, so like it photographers have to make a compromise, even bands have to make a compromise. Most bands are making $100 a night maybe,
Right, yeah.
and $60 immediately towards gas. You got $40. What are you going to really do with all that?
Yeah.
So I think it's awesome that bands are giving photographers that opportunity to tour, and it's also hats off to photographers willing to compromise what they should be getting as far as wage.
Sure.
But I definitely feel like whether you're a band, photographer, videographer, you want to do sound, whatever it is, even if it's a week-long tour or a 6-week-long tour, if you're given, I feel like you should get an opportunity. And it's awesome that those opportunities aren't so far out of reach. I know it's still difficult. You could be the best photographer wherever, and you still might not even get an opportunity, which is pretty unfortunate because there's a lot of talent out there, bands, whatever. But I personally feel everyone should have some form of opportunity to work with any band, whatever it is, even if it's just 2 shows in your home state.
Yeah.
So
I like to think of the idea of like 5149, like as far as the photographer, the documenter, however you want to word it, is like you're always having that little bit extra for the band. Like you're doing a little bit more, whether it's like I'll shoot photos for free, like, or because I think some people try to just jump into the woodwork of like, okay, like doing the math, I need to pay my rent to do this, and it's like, maybe jumping on a tour with a small local band isn't gonna pay your rent that month,
Right.
or however you want to swing it. But I think always providing more value than what's expected of you, and then having no expectations for that band to take you out again on tour or those things, because at the end of the day, like nobody owes you anything.
right.
Because if you do the right thing, enough people will notice, whether you expect it to be, person A or person B or however it works.
I don't really know. That one's an interesting perspective. Never really thought too much into that one.
Yeah. When you do go out with a band, are you usually doing merch with them as well, or is it more like because if you're doing something, you can't focus on the other as much as maybe you would want to?
I've kind of always been someone who's really multitask savvy. I'm a very antsy person. I wouldn't say I got like social anxieties. I definitely have some social awkwardness to me, but I can't really sit still too long. Even right now as we're doing this, I got my leg twitching and fidgeting a lot. But I've only done merch for Twitching Tongues, Momentum, and Judiciary,
Cool.
and photos as well. Um, and Jesus peace. I don't think I said that. But anyways, yeah, I never really have too much of trouble doing that. I definitely make my rounds when I can. If obviously there's a day where, um, it just depends if can you handle having multiple workloads. I've kind of always been expert at having multiple things to take care of at the same time. So I think, and it helps me mentally for sure, just because if I'm just doing one thing, I got to do something else. So like, here's an example. Um, when I went on tour Straight from the Path, um, they only wanted me to do photos, nothing else. Like, nothing. They didn't expect anything else. Um, Day one, I was already like, yo, where's the trailer? Open it up. Like, let's start moving some stuff inside. Tom was immediately like, you're loading? I'm like, yeah. I mean, what else am I gonna do? We load in at 2 p.m. Show's not till 6. So
Right.
what am I gonna do for 4 hours? I kind of need to do something. So uh, I could go sit in the green room for 4 hours, but I'm gonna go mentally insane
Right.
just sitting there. I can't. I have to be walking around sometimes, even at festivals or even shows, like in between bands, or I'll just take a round around the venue or whatever, and sometimes I don't even know what I'm thinking about. I just need to just walk just to get it out of my system. So yeah, so I kind of I like to take an initiative on myself. Like if something kind of needs to be done, if I could see that it needs to be done, I'm gonna try to do something about it. So helping out, load, set up a drum kit. I played drums a few years back, so I kind of know the gist of everything. So and I think helping out. I mean, you're on a tour, you should help out when you can.
Yeah, and that goes back to that, like, providing more value than what's expected of you or
Right.
what's agreed upon. Um, so one thing I wanted to ask was, well, and we roughly talked about this on when we were in Vancouver for DBK,
Right.
as far as like your editing style, because you can get things out very, very quickly.
Right.
And yeah, like you posted some momentum photos. Well, you didn't post them. I saw some of the guys posted them.
Right.
Even talk about that process. Like, are you Dropboxing it to them? Are you doing stuff late into the night? What
Yeah.
happens as soon as the show's over for you?
Uh, Not as it used to be. Obviously, before I started touring and like whatnot, I would just get home and edit pictures. Before I actually had like people I would hang out with outside of shows who go to shows. Before I used to just go to shows alone. I didn't really have any friends. It would just be me. So I would just immediately get home and work on the pictures and just post them. I obviously didn't really have much of a following then, so whoever saw it saw it. But nowadays it's I get home. So like last night, day one of Wild Rose Fest, I actually didn't work on any photos last night. Got home, we made some hot dogs, sat around for a little bit, watched Guardians of the Galaxy, and I thought about working on photos last night, but I typically don't take too long. I work with a couple presets that I've made and made some adjustments over the years. So I woke up at like 10:45 this morning, started editing around 11:10, whatever. Uh, yeah, I obviously majority of my work's in black and white. I do some color work, so I'll typically just throw the preset up, see what needs to be adjusted, see if it looks fine, copy and paste it on every photo, and see how it looks. If I need to adjust anything, I go from there. But typically, I don't spend more than an hour and a half at most. Sometimes even quicker, depending on the type of show. So on tour, obviously you're working. You want to have your work as best as it can be.
For sure.
Those days will be like 2 hours, but after that, I Dropbox all my photos. I used to do Flickr. Then as when I'm on tour, just Flickr is never really too savvy when it comes to sharing.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
so I'll do I used to do Google Drive. Not anymore. I have Dropbox specifically. So I'll just make a folder, throw it up so when I'm on tour, I can just have the band. Just here's a link. Every day it'll be updated. Check by noon, whatever time
Cool.
may be.
Okay.
So Dropbox is best. I do wish there was a different way to share photos without having to be so secretive. Just because on tour, people want to see your photos, even not just the band. So it's like, well, I wish there was just an easier way to like, yo, here's everything, check it all out. It'll be updated through the day, and you could do a website, but I just haven't obviously gotten around to
Yeah.
that.
So you mean secretively, like it's going to the band first, but you want to also push that to your
Yeah,
own platforms, or
yeah. It should be exclusive to the band. Obviously, if you're on tour with the band,
for sure.
so
Yeah.
I try to keep it exclusive. I know people like to peek at some things, which I definitely don't have a problem. Obviously, if the bands don't have problems with it, which I don't see why they would. Um, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. So festivals, uh, any festival, if I photograph it, I'll typically just throw an entire Dropbox link, be one folder, bunch of photos in it, check it out, and go from there. Um, but mainly just touring, I'll keep everything kind of exclusive to the band unless someone like asks specifically for a good reason, of course.
Sure.
So,
I saw on your when you were touring with Knock Loose, you were having some issues with one of your hard drives.
uh, funny story.
Okay.
Well, it's not too funny. Anyways,
It's
so
sad.
I've had that hard drive. I worked at Target for 5 years, and one day I bought it. It was on clearance for $20. It was like 90% off. So
I'll take that.
yeah. So I mean, it's a Western Digital. It's a name brand unit.
It's
so
just a passport, right?
yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I use it. I've been using it for 4.5 years now, I think, and yeah, it was just giving me issues. But I bought a new one, so I'm gonna keep the new one, and that'll be my backup because what I figured, it was just the cable from the USB to the passport. That was the only issue.
Yeah.
So when I bought the new one, it was obviously the same cable, so I tried it out and it worked perfectly fine. So, but yeah, so I'll have a backup drive now, which is probably something I should have anyways, just in the event that it's not the cable, it's the actual hard drive.
Right.
So.
Have you had a horror story or anything on your end when you've been on a tour that hopefully panned out, but maybe it was like a learning experience for you?
No, actually, shockingly, I would say that
I've dodged many bullets.
that hard drive thing was probably the closest thing to a horror story for tour as far as being a photographer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask, and something that Scoped has done, is making a Facebook group called Archivist Guild, and that's something that
Correct.
I've brought to you just to kind of try to unify some of the people who do our kind of work. Have you ever experienced someone stealing your photos, air quotes, or do you have any perspectives on, is that something that's okay, not okay? What are your thoughts on that?
I've never had anyone steal photos. I'd probably assume a lot of photographers beef me for certain things. I am, as far as how lenient I am with my photos. A lot of photographers definitely do feel disrespected when bands or artists can't throw the photo credit on there. I never really give too much of a hassle, even with like merchandise. I've never really been one to hassle a band over it. I have sent like, hey, mind if I just get a copy of it, like a shirt or poster, or CD, whatever. But I never really hassle bands. I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, I'm doing this out of my own like will. Bands aren't asking me most of the time to take photos. I just do it out of my own thing.
Right.
So if
For the love of it.
yeah. I mean, I love doing what I do, and even if I wasn't taking pictures, I'd still be at the show attending in the crowd. So so it's just my contribution to bands, and I think like bands definitely leapfrog off of photographers and artists as far as like we have content to provide so people can get the note out for the band. But same thing with photographers. It's photographers are taking pictures of all these bands, small or big. People are seeing them, and like, those things work hand in hand.
Yeah,
so,
it's a win-win.
So I personally, I understand when photographers do feel discredited, and I 100% back it. But I definitely do have a piece of me that's very lenient with that type of things, and I think a lot of people should always just keep in mind that most of the time they're not there with the band; they're just doing it out of their own pocket,
Right.
whatever. If a band, I've had bands offer me, hey, we could pay you. I've turned a couple bands down just because, it's not something, it's not a big means to me.
Sure.
There have been times where I'm like, yeah, I mean, for sure, I definitely do penny pinch, especially on tour. So it's just a compromise thing. It's business, But I try to be as lenient as I can. Try not to fit too much. Definitely keep yourself humble with those types of things for sure.
Right. So I know with this fest you were I had asked you earlier today, and I guess there was a certain after a certain band you were taking photos of the rest. Is it up to you to choose which bands you want to take photos of, or like how are you making those calls?
So
Because like you said, if a band's like, hey, like it'd be really cool if you took some photos of us, you're like, well, yeah, I could. That's going to be more work for me.
right. There's been times where I'll photograph every band. It just depends on how I'm feeling for sure. Sometimes fests, I definitely like to take a step back and sit down for a second.
For
whatever.
sure, yeah.
Um,
Wish you could do
it,
that.
it is a bummer sometimes. I definitely wish like if I could photograph every single band, I would. There's been times where I have, and I mean it is exhausting. I'm never really too worried about like, oh, this creates more work for me, or oh, I'm gonna be up an extra hour now because of this. But I definitely do pick and choose for sure. Sometimes, and sometimes I'll just photograph everybody. It all just depends in the moment for sure. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I don't think, you don't owe anything to the bands or vice versa.
For
So
sure.
it's just like, sometimes, again, having no expectations on like, yeah, I didn't even expect you to do this podcast. And
Right.
if you didn't, then it'd be like, I'm not going to be mad at Gabe. Like, there's a multitude of reasons if, you couldn't, because like you're kind of like around momentum. So if like they couldn't get here on time, or
Yeah.
we didn't want to do the podcast like during the fest, so there's a multitude of reasons. But I think setting your expectations low to be pleasantly surprised later potentially.
Yeah. I definitely would love to give bands platforms. I don't have like a huge following, I feel, but I if I could photograph every single band every single day, I would. It's like I said, bands and artists, whatever it is, work hand in hand. So if I could put a lot of bands on, I obviously would. It's just a matter of me doing it and finding a second to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any photographers that you take inspiration from, or you just generally just think that they're super sick and want to give them a little shout out?
Well, we'll do videographers first.
Sure.
My boy 197 Media, Steven Grease, from
The man.
California.
Yeah,
He's
California.
a wonderful person. He's hardworking. He's a husband. He's got a wife at home. He's got adult things to worry about, and he never takes any excuses to not make it to a show. Sure, there's times where he'll be exhausted, but he'll still drive out, and he lives kind of far. So if it's an LA show, he's driving 80 miles just going there.
Right.
And California obviously is not cheap, so he's definitely
And there's lots of traffic.
yeah, all that stuff taken into account. And he doesn't expect anything from anyone. He's just doing it out of his own, will too, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, Steven for sure. Jose, Shutter Happy Jose, Instagram. Wonderful guy. I've been following him so long. I don't even remember where. I believe he used to live in the Bay Area, so I never met him. Probably met him 2015 maybe.
Okay.
And he's just always been all around wonderful to me. And yeah, he's awesome. Dan Raw, hardcore
Oh, yeah. I
California
love Dan.
legend. He's
Yeah.
been around forever. He's always been completely supportive of anybody, whether you're been around forever. He's just been open arms to anybody. So I think it's awesome. He definitely brought me closer with a lot of photographers. Aaron Herrera, um, awesome people. Tyler Ross. I wouldn't have met both of them without Dan Raw, Meredith. Yeah, and all those people have always been super supportive and just genuine people, I feel. Awesome to have those people around. So shout out to all of them.
Yeah.
There's so many photographers I can't even
Yeah,
name.
we could literally sit here for
I could sit
like
here forever.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah, there's too many to name for sure, and I think there's a lot of talent out there, and I'm happy that people are like stepping up and making sure their names are being put out there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Would you say where do you see all this going? Because you've been doing this for a good amount of time now. Do you feel like you have a ceiling? Do you feel like you could do this until you're 60? Like what's your? Are you just like riding the wave and just seeing how it plays out?
For sure, it's a lot of ride waving. I've been fortunate enough that pretty much every tour that I've done, it just keeps getting better and better. Going from working with Momentum, to like Twitching Tongues, to Judiciary, to Straight from the Path, to Knock Loose. Like, you see the scale there.
Yeah.
You know like how much different how drastic that changes. So I'm just riding the wave. Whatever opportunities come, if I could take it, I'm gonna take it.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, though, like you got to make compromises on a lot of things, whether it's wage, whether it's personal reason. As far as the ceiling goes, I'm gonna just go till I can't. Whether people see it as dedication or whatever, I just
But it's also a skill that you can use even if you weren't shooting hardcore.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally would like to have like an off music photo job. I'm not too really big on like portrait work and stuff. I do it, but it's not like it's not what I'm like.
Yeah.
It's not my preference.
Feel you. Yeah.
I'm just gonna take what I can get and see where it ends up. I do have backup plans, and when I get home, it's not just hey, next tour, here's money, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's I get home, I'm immediately I drive Lyft, which is like Uber here.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
what's it called? Yeah. So I'm pretty much the moment I get home, it's like okay, here's a day's rest. Let me get some sleep, do laundry, whatever, say hello to my family, whatever, and by the next day I'm already out trying to hustle whatever it is. So do Lyft, side shoots, whatever. I've done temporary jobs, so I'll work in like a warehouse for like a week or something.
Sure.
Hop in there, make whatever coin I can.
Yeah.
Just staying busy as much as I can. It's kind of
Yeah,
key.
I have a photographer friend. His name is Dwayne, back in Winnipeg, where I'm from, and he said that he's a freelance photographer, and he'll do he does shows, but more so in like rock bands or things like that. But he'll do like lots of events, odd jobs here and there, and he told me that he's been doing it long enough that he knows that there's certain months that are slow for him. Right. So he works at a photo store.
Right.
For I think it's like 2 or 3 months, but he's like he has an agreement that he's like I know it's going to be slow, and he has agreement that for them it's like a busy time of year. It's like around Christmas, so yeah, it's just like you said, like making those compromises to have that lifestyle of traveling all over the world and seeing a bunch of bands and doing that work, but like you said, still hustling on the side to do that.
You would feel it's work and play, but I can guarantee you, at least for me, it's work. Just keep doing it.
Yeah, and then maybe play for a little bit. Yeah,
I definitely do have my share, but I definitely know how to have fun on tours and stuff, and
for sure,
it's awesome that that I'm here. I'm here just hanging out. I'm taking pictures, of course, but this is play for me. Mm-hmm. So, Sound and Fury, play. I may be taking pictures of every single band playing, but I'm still having some fun. I'll drop my camera down and stage dive or,
Yeah.
you know, pit for a second.
Yeah. That's the
whatever.
one thing I wish about doing video, like full sets versus photos, is that photos, it's like once you feel like you got enough, then you can
Yeah,
kind
you
of.
can have a second.
Yeah.
This one was awesome. It's just a little story. Sound and Fury this year, Freedom was playing, and when they opened with Freedom into Slam, song start, and I'm on top of the balcony, and I'm like, of course, this Slam's next. So I immediately dropped my camera. I had a friend like, why did he drop his camera? And then I immediately just ran downstairs, staged out for a second, and just pitted for the first minute and a half, obviously. Ran back upstairs. So
And then like started taking photos.
yeah,
Almost
again,
immediately.
Yeah. Sunny Hate 56 does it too. I've seen videos of him at this
Yeah.
hardcore. He'll put his camera down. He's feeling the moment, you know.
Even with his camera.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
I've done it with my camera a handful of times. And sometimes I've taken pictures while I'm, you know, in the crowd. Sounds crazy.
Yeah.
But
But you, like you said, it's like having those moments.
It's
just-
sometimes in the moment you
Yeah.
just have a second to yourself. So, yeah. So obviously you're working, but you know, have some fun with it. So
Yeah.
So even work, tour, come home, make as much money to pay rent, make as much money to pay whatever bills you got. It's, you know, just try to have fun with whatever you're doing for sure.
Yeah.
Like I said, I like driving Lyft. I don't like to talk to people first. I'll wait for them to break the ice there. But once we're talking about like something I can, you know, obviously talk about, it's nice. You know, I have fun talking to people. I worked in retail for 5 years, and definitely taught me a lot. There are bad people out there that you don't want to talk to. But there's those handful of people that just hello or whatever it is, or give me just talk about your day for a second. I won't even say anything. I'll just listen.
Yeah.
It kind of just turns your day around into like a good thing. So,
Yeah. And that kind of boils down to like self-awareness, is like,
Yeah.
this is what I want to do, and this is what it takes to
Right.
do that. And I'm not going to, you know, have anyone's judgment of like, oh, you drive, like, who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely, I don't know. I like to listen to people talk. I want to hear about your day sometimes. Sometimes it's hard for me to listen to people's days, and then I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay. But,
Like, how many more blocks do we have?
yeah, it's like how much longer? But yeah, I definitely try to be very open to like what people have to say sometimes.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
That's cool. So we have a reoccurring segment to kind of wrap up the podcast here on super simple, just your favorite hardcore mosh story, whether it was you, whether it was someone else that you know. I feel like that's the best way to wrap up this whole thing.
That's a hard one. I don't really have too many. Me personally, I don't really mosh. I have a second. Some of my favorite times that I've seen. Here's a fun one. Hatebreed played Doomsayer. We were in somewhere in North Carolina, I believe, and Randy from Lamb of God came out and did Doomsayer with Hatebreed, and I'm just standing there, just like, okay. And Taylor and Alec from Twitching Tongues were like, they looked at each other for a second and immediately like, all right, let's go. They ran straight to the pit and just started like, you know, having their fun for a second. I thought that was pretty awesome. I can't really think of too many other. Oh, here's one. Harley Flanagan played Sound and Fury 18. Oh, 17. And I see Dan from Downpresser, Aldo from Human Garbage, Section Hate, just rocking out, and just, you know, it's awesome because for me, it's like, whether I'm in the crowd or taking pictures, I see those people on the stage singing those songs that they wrote, and then in those instances, you're seeing those people who are watching, the people who basically inspired them to like do what they're doing now. So
Just like seeing your friends like stoked.
To see other
everything.
people just
I love
doing,
that.
you know. So there's that. I personally don't have any like crazy stories as far as moshing and stuff, but I think those are some cool things that I've seen for sure.
Yeah.
And just instances like that are just awesome. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Sweet. Well, that kind of wraps it up. Before we go, do you want to plug your Instagram or anything on how people can keep up with you?
Yeah, so my Twitter and Instagram is GabeThePigeon, or Gabe Becerra. You should be able to find it on both ends. Yeah, it's kind of. I don't really have anything else. Yeah.
How do people contact you for touring and stuff?
Every time it's been DM on Instagram. I've had one. Well, I've had two people from text. Second one was I don't even know how they got my number, but I'm sure it's obtainable anyway nowadays.
Right.
So
You can Google it. You'll find it.
yeah, exactly. And so many people know each other, So
For sure.
Hey, what's Gabe's number?
Cool. Well, definitely go follow Gabe, like every single one of his photos, because I'm a huge, huge fan of your work, and I'm really glad that we got to do this podcast recording together.
Yeah, thank you for having me so much. It's been
Thank you.
Absolutely awesome. Quickly, shout out to SOS Booking, shout out to Suburban Fight, the Wild Rose family, DPK in Vancouver.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so many people I honestly want to thank. Real quick, I had to make sure to throw this in there. I haven't been on a podcast, never been asked. So many people I want to thank. Any band, any artist, any promoter that's over the years supported me. Thank you so much. There is no entity of me without anybody who works behind the scenes. So, thank you.
That there's no better way to end that. Thanks.